What's up, guys? Here in my hand, I have a survey that we have received over 10,000 responses. Thank you very much for everyone who participated in this survey. This is very helpful for the airport and myself when we are discussing potential routes with airlines. So what I want to do in this video is go over all the questions that everybody has answered. Overall, we did receive over 10,000 responses, like I said before, so awesome job, very helpful, thank you. So let's go over this information. So question one was, how often do you typically travel for leisure, either vacation or personal, in a year? So less than once per year. We had about 3.42% of the respondents said that they travel less than once a year, okay? 30% has said 1 to 2 times per year, and 41% has said 3 to 4 times per year, and 24% has said 5 or more times per year. So that is helpful. What the airlines are looking for here is frequency, right? So within our catchment area, which includes Whatcom County, Island County, Skagit County, a little bit of San Juan County. In totality, we have roughly about 450,000 citizens here that live within our catchment area, what we consider our catchment area. And by the way, catchment area just means essentially what personnel are in that catchment area are more likely to travel out of Bellingham. So we have determined that through a lot of stats and boring stuff previously years ago of determining what our catchment area size is. So what the airlines are looking for here is that they're looking for, how many frequencies are 1, 2, or 3 people, and we'll get into that question a little bit later, but they're looking for frequency here. How many times are people traveling within our catchment area per year? So it's really helpful to see 3 to 4 times per year. Even 1 to 2 times per year is amazing. We all need vacation. I surely do. Moving on to question number 2. Which airports do you currently use most often for travel? So the selections here were Bellingham International Airport, Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, YVR, which is Vancouver International Airport, and Payne Field out of Everett. So the results were this. 58% said they travel out of Bellingham International Airport. Thank you, guys and ladies. 86% said Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. 21% said Vancouver International Airport, and 21% said Payne Field Everett. So again, you look at those percentages, of course, they're not going to add up to 100% because not everyone just uses one airport or the other. It's just a matter of how many respondents use what airport the most. So what we see here is Seattle-Tacoma is used the most, and we know why. Why they're using Seattle-Tacoma the most is because they have the most amount of frequencies, they have more destinations. They're just simply a larger airport, okay? They're a large hub airport, and we are a non-hub primary airport, which means very small airport. So what the airlines look for here, and this kind of correlates with what we have data that supports essentially what was responding, or your responses to this question, is that in our catchment area, we leak roughly about 70% of our catchment area down to Seattle because of the options, the frequencies, the times of travel meets your needs better, just a larger airport, so we expect that. However, we also know where the top 20 origin and destination airports are that our catchment area wants to travel to. So for example, if, it's not if, I understand this because we have the data, but a lot of people like to go to Maui, Kona, Honolulu. If Bellingham doesn't offer that flight, but either Payne Field does or Seattle does, then that is part of what we call leakage, right? So you're leaving our catchment area to go to a different airport so you can get to where you want to go. So we look at that and say, yep, that route could be very sustainable here at Bellingham. And with your responding to question number 2, it makes sense. Most of you use Seattle-Tacoma International Airport. So that said, we'll move on to the next question here. Question number 3 is, which U.S. destination would you most like to see offered as a nonstop from Bellingham? Select all that apply. So I'll go through some of these and highlight. You guys can see this on the screen here, but the most preferred route, which performed very well back in the day, and we won't get into the nuances of why it went away, but it's Hawaii, Maui, Kona, Honolulu. I believe it was over 60%. Yep, 63% of people who took the survey said they want to go back there. So super helpful. Some other highlighted areas here we have is San Diego. Do know that route is going away next year. Allegiant is no longer serving that. So that would be an unserved market that we can begin having discussions with other airlines. It's always been an excellent route for our airport and the community as well. Another large percentage as far as Northern California, so San Francisco Bay Area. I believe that was at 34% of the personnel who took the survey, so they would go there. And then you can see how it falls through there. You know, we have Portland, we have Denver, we have Chicago. You know, we have a lot of these larger hubs. And what we're looking for here is that this is not just, I mean, these are nonstops. This is what the question said, right? It's seen as offered as nonstop. So we're trying to gauge like how many origin and destination passengers would support that specific route. Like how many people want to go directly to Sky Harbor and stay in Sky Harbor? Likewise with Portland, likewise with Denver, Chicago, etc. However, we also do understand and realize that these are little hub and spoke models here, and that flying out of Bellingham to one of these larger hubs outside of Seattle provides a great opportunity to connect where you want to go beyond that. So I think we may have missed that question in here as far as me not including it into the survey, but again, we have that data that supports where you guys go beyond Seattle, Tacoma, or beyond any of these other destinations. We just want to know how many of those individuals who in our catchment area would like to go from Bellingham directly to one of these destinations. So thank you very much. That's super helpful. We can definitely elaborate off of how many of you would go beyond these large hubs or medium-sized hub airports. So thank you. All right, question number 4, as we dive into this. Question number 4 is, if Bellingham offered a nonstop flight to one of the destinations you selected, how likely would you be to choose BLI over Seattle, Payne, or YVR, Vancouver? Almost all of you have said very likely or likely. So you can see here on the screen, we have roughly about 99% of people who took the survey would rather use BLI. I fall in that same category. I too would also always use BLI as long as we had the routes and the frequency and the conveniency of going to where I need to go. But that's very likewise with your guys' responses as well. Just to highlight, and I will go over this, I'll be pretty transparent. The bottom 2 here, unlikely or very unlikely. So we had roughly about 41 individuals say they would not use BLI if we offered those nonstop flights. I can handle 41 emails. So if you guys want to elaborate on why you don't want to use BLI, if you had a bad experience, let me know. My email is matthew.r@portofbellingham.com. Love to hear more. All right, moving on to question number 5. Would you rather fly out of Seattle for a direct flight to your destination or fly out of BLI with a one-stop connection to reach your final destination? These are 4 cities BLI does not currently serve nonstop. So that said, that means, would you rather fly out of Seattle for a direct flight? So you'd have to get on I-5 or take a flight down there or whatever mode of transportation that you prefer to get down to Seattle. And fly directly out of Seattle to where you're going, to your final destination? Or would you rather just fly out of Bellingham, connect to one of these other airports here on this page that shows one of these other large or medium-sized hubs that will connect you where you need to be? So getting into the data here, We have 16%, almost 17% said, nope, I'd rather go to Seattle. I'd rather fight that traffic one way or another to get to my destination with one flight. And then 39, almost nearly 40% said would rather prefer to fly out of Bellingham, even if it requires one stop. Me too. I align with that. I do not want to drive down to Seattle. I mean, it's great, but that drive is terrible. And then interestingly enough, which I assumed this was going to happen, was that the majority, 43% of people said, well, it depends, like price, schedule, airline. I agree. And whenever anyone buys a ticket, I mean, it has to conform to your schedule, your family schedule, the day you want to fly out, how much does it cost, and the airline. Some people have good and bad experiences with airlines that they would rather prefer. I get that. So, yeah, this is super helpful. And what the airline's looking for here is exactly what we want them to understand, is that the community wants to use our airport, even if it requires a one stop, right? We already have that here where Alaska flies from Bellingham to Seattle. About 98% of those passengers are connecting to their final destination through Seattle. It's just a matter of having more opportunity out of Bellingham. And if we can connect those people through one of these larger hub airports, either connect them, or if this is your final destination, it's a win-win, right? So a lot of people, they want to connect out of Sky Harbor, or they want to connect out of Denver. And it really just depends on, the flight offerings out of whatever airport you intend to connect out of. So maybe that's something that we can move forward with a different survey. This definitely helps us understand of what kind of questions we want to pose to the community after we've digested all this great information. All right, question number 6. How much more, if any, would you be willing to pay to depart from Bellingham instead of driving to Seattle, Payne, or Vancouver for the same trip? So this is a very important question. We want to understand the desire of our community and catchment area, and if, what would it take for them to fly out of here and avoid any kind of transportation battles going down to Seattle. So this is where we're kind of wanting to learn from our respondents. So $0 more said, I would only choose Bellingham if the fare is the same or lower. That's fair. About 15% said up to $25 more per person. 27% said up to $50 more per person. And 18% said up to $75 more per person. And about 14% said, I would rather pay $100 more per person to fly out of Bellingham than have to go to Painfield, Seattle, or YVR. I'll tell you one thing, I definitely fit in between the $50 and $100 more per person category, because personally, I always spend more money going out of Seattle, whether it's parking, the gas, the stress. You really can't have a price tag on stress, but except for taking years off your life, which I think that has taken years off my life, battling the traffic down there. And then about 17% said about, it depends on parking, schedule, airline, et cetera. That's also very fair. So why this is important to the airline is that, they also have to be profitable. So if they are looking to include the routes that our community desires at Bellingham, it has to be a sustainable route long-term for that airline to choose a route and serve it here. And, a lot goes into what it takes to operate such a route, the costs that the airlines risk in that process. So with this data, it helps them be able to price an appropriate airfare for a certain route coming to Bellingham, right? A lot goes into this, right? So if there's already, and this is all like unserved routes, right? When we talk about unserved routes, it's routes that Bellingham does not currently serve. However, if there is another airline that serves the same route that another airline wants to jump into, we call that a little bit of market share, is that they have to be competitive with one another, right? That can go good or bad for either or. But since Bellingham has so many unserved markets, it's really good. And it's not that the airline's going to come in and they're going to see this data and say, well, we're just going to jack all of our prices up. What they look at is, what are they charging out of Seattle? What are they charging out of nearby airports for a similar or same route, right? And how much more is our passengers willing to pay for that route, and can it be profitable here? Again, it's more convenience, right? If you live in Bellingham, of course, like, you want to fly out of Bellingham. It's convenience, it's close, and we'll jump into that question here soon. But the airlines need to understand, are we going to be able to hit our profit margin? Are we going to be able to assume the risk that it's going to take to serve this route that the community wants? So a lot goes into that. This information is super helpful. Appreciate that. All right, question number 7. What factors would make you choose Bellingham over Seattle, Payne, or YVR? So this question is very important because it kind of correlates with question number 6. As far as the responses go, it definitely complements question number 6. So let's dive in. So again, this was multi-select, so the percentages obviously are not going to add up. This is multi-select. So the factors are a shorter drive, closer to home. 93% of people who took the survey said this is what would make me choose Bellingham over any other airport. It's a shorter drive, closer to home. I couldn't agree with you more. Lower cost or easier parking. 68% of you said, hey, it's cheaper and it's easier parking. That's why I also choose Bellingham International Airport. Nonstop service, of course, everybody wants nonstop service. It's the best service. I couldn't disagree with you there. Better departure arrival times. So a lot goes into that, right? Again, your schedule, the airline schedule, but 40% of you selected, it has better departure and arrival times. 15% said it's a factor of a U.S. airport, so avoiding border crossing. So I assume that 15% right there, you guys are more prone to driving up to YVR to get where you're going. Maybe it's a better deal. So we do appreciate you answering that honestly. And then here's a one that makes total and complete sense is 79% of you said it's a smaller, easier airport experience. We can agree more. Going into a large airport, and that's just what they are, they're a large airport. I think they're cool. I think they have a lot of cool infrastructure. I think they have really cool shops and shopping centers and food, and the experience overall, from my own experience going to larger hub airports, has been great. But I would say about 90% of the time, for me at least, I just want a convenience airport experience, right? I do prefer the smaller airports because sometimes the larger airports with all the people in there get a bit chaotic, right? Kind of takes away from your experience. So appreciate those answers there. And then going into the last 2 questions here, pretty easy. Question number 8 is, where do you live? The majority of the respondents, as far as, I wouldn't say majority, but a significant portion of the respondents of the survey said Bellingham, which is good. That's what we want to hear too. Then you have Whatcom County, Skagit County, and then Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, BC. There was a lot of comments in here for other areas where people live outside of these listed areas that you could have selected. So we're going to have to dive a little bit deeper into that. Again, that will help us tailor any additional survey that we would release in the near future, maybe at the end of 2026. Currently, right now, we have a lot of good data to present to an airline. So we're going to go off of what we have right now, and if airlines have any additional questions or they want more information, we will put something together and we'll kind of explain that, and we'll always share why we're doing this, how we're doing this, and what are the benefits of these surveys. We'll talk a little bit about that after I'm done with question 9 here. Question 9 reads, how many people are typically traveling with you on leisure trips? This is also very important to share with the airline. Going into these responses, 12%, nearly 13% of you said, I usually travel alone. 55%, or the majority of the respondents, said 2 people. 26% said 3 to 4 people, and about 5% said 5 or more people. Obviously, that's 3 to 4 people or 5 or more are families or larger groups on the same reservation, which is excellent. That's super helpful to share with the airlines because they want to see as far as how you responded to this survey, with where you want to go, which airports you use, the frequency of when you fly, frequency of times throughout the year you fly. Now we need to know how many people are with you, typically when you travel every single time. So I appreciate that. So, okay, we've gone through the data. There's probably still a lot of questions out there. Feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll be more than happy to address any question that we can. I do want to share some additional information with you guys, is that we released this survey roughly about 3 weeks ago. I think 3 weeks ago exactly. And we received an overwhelming of 10,000 responses, organically shared, by the way. We didn't use any of our funding to push this out or distribute it. We simply posted to the port social media and the airport social media pages, and you all helped us significantly by just sharing. That is how we got to 10,000 responses. And what that tells me and tells us and our port team here is that there's a lot of demand where you guys want to go. This data here is so important because it's already helped us secure 2 meetings with potential airline partners. So I went ahead and made my case and shared some of this information with some airline partners, and 2 of them want to know more. So it's a start. It's not an easy process. Again, there's a lot of decision making that does go into an airline's decision making of, hey, this route makes sense, let's go do it. It's not as easy as that. It takes a little bit more relationship building, understanding how is the route going to work out. So many factors that go into it that it's just not an overnight thing. It's not even like a next month thing. It can be even like the end of next year or even potentially the following year, right? So we have to make a good case that it's a good, solid route that will work here. Airline's going to go ahead and do their whole background analysis on the route. We have discussions and further discussions on how we make this route possible. How does the airport support the airline? And likewise, how will airline support the airport is, essentially by providing that additional air service to the airport for our catchment area and our community. So it's not, like I said, it's not an overnight thing. It does take time. It takes a lot of relationship building. It takes a lot of ongoing communication, a lot of intentional actions on the airport side, of which we've all signed up for. We are pursuing that. So yeah, I just want to be very transparent that this survey was definitely was not for nothing. It wasn't just like let's gather some fun facts. No, like we are using this data as part of our other data that we receive, and that we can make a stronger case to airlines to get those routes that you desire. So that said, we will keep working here. We have a lot to do ahead of us. We have some meetings ahead of us. I personally have some air service development conferences to head off to, in 2026 to begin having additional conversations with airline partners. But we hope to see some additional routes next year, and I'm sure you do too. But if you have any other questions or concerns, for those 41 people who don't want to use our airport, feel free to drop me a line. Be happy to answer any questions, and we look forward to bringing additional air service to our airport.